Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laiq Siddiqui, the father of Holophase. Part 2. The Measurement First Pivot. This part changes everything by changing the order of trust. The Quiet Reset. Most people think science begins with things: space, time, matter, energy, and measurement simply reveals them, like opening a curtain on a pre-built stage. Holophase reverses this. The flashlight comes first. The thing comes later. Not because the world is imaginary, but because our access is always through comparison. Science is not a museum of objects. It's a disciplined practice of differences that can be repeated, checked, and made accountable. This part takes you back to the simplest human ability and builds everything from there: prediction, falsification, responsibility, and the right to say without superstition, "This is real." The child before words. Imagine a child before language. No nouns, categories, or theories. Yet the child already knows. This is not that. This toy differs from that toy. This sound differs from silence. This warmth differs from cold. This moment of waiting differs from now. Before explanation, there is comparison. Before belief, contrast. Before any grand story, the raw act of noticing difference. Every scientific instrument ever built is a grown-up version of that child. A thermometer says, "This state differs from that state." A clock says, "This interval differs from that interval." A telescope says, "This light pattern differs from that one." A detector says, "This signal differs from background." Civilization refined childhood into public protocols. Your daily life runs on this, comparing sweetness in tea, weight in markets, tone in voices. Holophase makes this humble act the law of admission for science. The detour we took. Somewhere we forgot what we were doing. We started speaking as if science discovers entities: particles, forces, fields, space-time, energy. We treated these words as the floor of reality. But inspect any experiment. You don't measure a thing. You measure a difference in readings. A dial moves. A fringe shifts. A voltage changes. A spectrum tilts. A counter clicks. Only then do we interpret. We compress patterns into names: electron, curvature, energy flow. Interpretation is necessary. Without it, we drown in raw data, like drowning in rain without recognizing rhythms. But Holophase refuses to let interpretation pretend it came first. Measurement first, story second. Everyday example. You hear a knock. First, silence, sound, difference. Then, someone is there, interpretation. The sound is the reading. Someone is inference. Science works the same. Holophase demands we never confuse the two. The hard rule. Holophase gives a rule that sounds strict until you see it's honest. If you cannot express a claim as a comparison operation, you do not get to call it science. This doesn't mean only what we can measure exists. It means only what can be compared can be claimed publicly as science. There may be more reality than we reach, but science isn't guessing what might be. It's disciplined practice about what we can check. Holophase doesn't shrink reality, it shrinks pretension. If you want to bring a claim into the shared world, show the comparison pathway that could prove you wrong. The invisible mountain. Test this with a story. Imagine someone says, "There's a mountain behind the clouds that no one can ever see, touch, detect, infer, or be affected by." You might enjoy the image, find it comforting, but you cannot build a bridge based on it, fly an airplane using it, plan agriculture around it, bet civilization on it. Holophase doesn't insult such claims. It says they're not part of shared reality. Shared reality is what survives shared comparison. This is the moral difference between private belief and public science. Private belief may guide your heart. Public claims must guide a community. The rope test. Holophase's simple image. Every claim must have a rope tied to it. One end, the sentence you say. Other end, an operation someone else can perform. If your sentence floats freely, no matter how elegant, it's not shared knowledge. It may be poetry, metaphysics, mythology, private vision. Meaningful, but not the same as public, testable claims. A strong rope has 5 strands. 1. Comparator. What's compared to what? 2. Protocol. How is comparison performed? 3. Scope. Under what conditions is it licensed? 4. Uncertainty. How wrong might you be and why? 5. Failure mode. What observation would break the claim? Missing any strand, the rope snaps. The claim cannot be carried by a community across time. Think of a rope bridge. You cross only if ropes are tight and knots real. In holophase, words are the bridge, operations are the knots. Without knots, you fall into endless debate. Licensed conditions. Notice licensed. It matters. In everyday life, you already know licensing. Bathroom scale. Reliable on flat floor, unreliable on tilted carpet. Microphone. Works in quiet room, struggles in storm. Blurry photograph. Cannot prove a face. Rumor is not evidence. Science is the same. A claim is only as good as conditions keeping the comparator coherent. Holophase formalizes this with licensed windows, regions where signal is coherent enough that phase, frequency, and gradients can be estimated with bounded error. You don't need the math yet, just the principle. A measurement is not a look. It's a disciplined look under conditions that make error accountable. Licensing confesses instruments have domains. A microscope isn't a telescope. A telescope isn't a microphone. A meter stick isn't a clock. Push an instrument outside its domain, you're not measuring, you're gambling. Measurement is not looking. People say, "I observed," but observation is personal. Measurement is public. Measurement requires repeatable procedure, calibration, uncertainty. Others must reproduce your comparison. You must tell them what counts as success and failure. Thus, Holophase says sharply, truth in science is not authority. Truth is shared vulnerability to error. That vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the engine of convergence. Audio metaphor. Tuning an old radio. Strong signal. Everyone agrees on words. Weak signal. Hiss rises. Different people hear different sentences. Low coherence produces many interpretations. High coherence produces one shared reading. Science is building high coherence in comparisons, so the world speaks clearly through instruments. The calibration chain. To measure is to compare. To compare is to compare to a standard. A ruler isn't space. It's a standardized object with markings calibrated and traced to definitions. A clock isn't time. It's a periodic process, compared and corrected against agreed references. Public reality builds through calibration chains. Your local instrument compares to a better instrument, compares to a national standard, compares to an international definition. This isn't bureaucracy. It's how private sensation becomes public fact. Calibration isn't only for machines. Humans need it too. Two doctors diagnosing same illness. Shared protocols and thresholds, not just shared compassion. Two engineers building fitting parts. Measurements traced to same standards. Shared reality is a social achievement built on operational discipline. Holophase emphasizes deepest claims must reduce to deepest comparators. If the chain's bottom is fog, the top is a cathedral built on mist. Once you accept measurement first thinking, absolute claims collapse. You cannot responsibly say, this exists absolutely, or this is the ultimate layer. Only within these conditions, under these comparisons, within this uncertainty. Reality becomes layered by access, not ranked by importance. This isn't relativism, it's operational honesty. Think ocean. Far away, smooth. Closer, waves. Closer, foam. Closer, droplets. None fake. Each licensed by different comparator and resolution. Think city at night. Mountain, glowing carpet. Street, shops and faces. Home, single candle. City didn't change. Your access changed. Your comparator changed. Your scale changed. The end of magical foundations. Measurement first thinking ends sneaking foundations through the back door. Space-time, fields, energy, laws. These may be excellent compressions, useful. But Holophase asks before granting citizenship, where is the comparator? If you cannot answer, the concept cannot be a foundation. It's a derived story. Derived stories must earn place by prediction and falsification, not tradition, beauty, or comfort. Thus, Holophase treats foundation talk as dangerous. It makes you feel you've reached bedrock. But bedrock in science isn't what you imagine. Bedrock is what you can repeatedly test. The map, the territory. Another reason for the rope test. Language is dangerously smooth. A fluent sentence can feel like a fact. A confident voice can feel like evidence. A beautiful equation can feel like a foundation. But smoothness isn't truth. Smoothness is only smoothness. A map is useful because it matches territory in specific, testable ways. Stand at crossroads, compare signposts to map. Decide if map is trustworthy. Uncheckable map becomes fantasy drawing. Holophase treats every theory this way. Your words and equations are maps. The world is territory. The only bridge? Comparison. Thus, the firewall isn't philosophical decoration. It's a survival mechanism. It prevents civilization mistaking elegant sentences for the universe. Prediction, the compass. A measurement without prediction is a diary entry. Tells what happened once. A law is a contract. Tells what will happen again, within stated uncertainty if you repeat protocol. Thus, Holophase predicts about scientific cultures. Any framework allowing core entities without explicit comparison pathways will eventually generate unbounded metaphysical debate, split into incompatible interpretations, require philosophical patching after math is done. not insult. Pattern. When rope is loose, stories multiply. When tight, stories converge. Medicine example. Treatment judged by stories, endless arguments. Judged by controlled comparison, placebo, randomization, blinding, defined outcomes, convergence. Same applies to physics, cosmology. Foundations untied to comparison, community argues forever about what math really means. Holophase predicts interpretation wars aren't primarily intelligence failures. They're measurement discipline failures, places where rope was never tied tightly enough. Prediction as cacheable promise. When Holophase says prediction, it doesn't mean vague prophecy. It means a promise cacheable at the bank of measurement. If I claim a pattern is real, I must tell you what you'll read next if you repeat protocol under same licensed conditions. Not perfectly, not forever, within error band declared in advance. Weather forecasting analogy. Forecast isn't story about clouds. It's prediction about readings, pressure changes, wind vectors, rainfall totals. Forecast earns trust by being right often enough, loses trust when failing systematically. Atmosphere doesn't care how beautiful your explanation is. It cares whether comparisons keep matching. Navigation sharper analogy. Captain crossing sea doesn't believe in star model. Captain compares angles and times, predicts location. Model lands ship on rocks, model dies. That's prediction. World forcing your map to pay rent. Holophase wants cosmogenesis to pay rent too. Propose origin pathway must constrain what traces we should see, how they correlate, what counts as decisive mismatch. The universe in court. Imagine universe as courtroom, where nature is judge, measurement is evidence. In that courtroom, confidence is not a witness. Fame is not a witness. Intelligence is not a witness. Only comparisons are witnesses. Claim enters court only if bringing evidence examinable by others. Protocol, calibration, uncertainty, scope. Cross-examination in science is replication. Hostile lawyer is negative control. Surprise witness is new instrument. Verdict. Do predicted readings appear within declared error when tests repeated? Holophase builds entire method to make this courtroom fair. No hidden assumptions, no private revelations, only public evidence, courage to accept verdict. Evidence fails, story changes, even if beloved. Falsification, clean death. Holophase puts its neck on the line. Part 2 would be false if someone produced reproducible scientific practice whose core entities are never tied to comparison operations, yet practice remains stable, interpretation independent, immune to philosophical fragmentation. If such practice exists, Holophase retreats. Why Holophase loves falsification? Not for destruction, to prevent knowledge rotting into ideology. Mature claim doesn't demand loyalty. It offers a way to lose. Mature method does more than seek supportive evidence. It builds hostile tests, negative controls, placebo checks, scope boundaries, pipeline parity checks exposing self-deception. Simple hostile test. Run analysis pipeline on dataset where effect shouldn't exist. Pipeline still discovers effect. Method generating illusions. Holophase calls this firewall habit. You don't only chase truth, you hunt your own errors. The counterworld habit. Powerful method must include catching yourself fooling yourself. Holophase, counterworld habit. Take your pipeline. Reconstruction, inference, cherish procedure. Apply to counterworld. Deliberately alter situation where claim should fail. Claim still appears, discovered not law of nature, but law of your own bias. Ordinary science. Negative controls, scrambled labels, blind analysis, placebo trials, calibration checks. Holophase. Formal requirement. Claims must survive not only supportive data, but structured falsification attempts. Thus, Holophase insists on scope masks. Claim must state where valid. Extend beyond domain, not brave, careless. Firewall forces stamping every law with jurisdiction. Here, Holophase becomes science as character. Trains reflex. Don't ask only, can I prove this? Ask, can I break this? Second question keeps first honest. The ethical turn. Measurement comes first. Ethics appears automatically. Cannot exaggerate certainty. Uncertainty part of rope. Cannot hide scope limits. Licensing part of rope. Cannot smuggle metaphysics into result comparators judge. Holophase isn't only theory of reality, it's theory of how to behave when claiming truth. Especially matters in cosmogenesis, where temptation to speak beyond instruments is strong. Universe didn't leave diary, left traces. Holophase. Treat traces like forensic evidence, not mythic permission. Forensic investigator. Doesn't begin with story, hunt clues to match. Begins with clues, builds chain of comparisons any other investigator can audit. Holophase wants cosmology forensic. Retrodiction with licenses, not narration with confidence. Practice for listener. Try on your mind. Pick statement feeling obviously real. Time flows. Space is container. Energy is substance. Objects are fundamental. Apply rope test. What exactly compared to what? Under what conditions? With what instrument? With what uncertainty? What counts as failure? Some claims become crisp, powerful. Others become fog. Others reveal themselves as poetry. Holophase doesn't forbid poetry. It forbids confusing poetry with operational knowledge. This practice brings child back inside scientist, quietly removes arrogance. World becomes more mysterious, not less, because you stop mistaking words for world. Daily life story. Human scale picture. Mechanic diagnosing car. Driver. My car is possessed. Story. Expresses frustration, not repair method. Mechanic begins with comparisons. Engine sound at idle versus under load. Vibration low speed versus high speed. Fuel pressure reading versus standard range. Error code versus known patterns. Mechanic doesn't debate metaphysics. Mechanic ties ropes. Comparator, protocol, scope, uncertainty, failure mode. Mechanic says, this is fault, really means, this hypothesis predicts specific changes in readings if we do this test next. Test fails, hypothesis dies, mechanic moves on. Holophase wants physics with same dignity. Less theater, more testable diagnosis. Deeper implication. Deeper shock. If all we ever touch are differences in readings, things aren't the floor. Things are compressions, names for patterns repeating across protocols. Chair. Stable family of comparisons. Pressure, shape, resistance, texture. Planet. Stable family. Light curves, trajectories, timings. Storm. Stable family. Pressure fields, winds, radar echoes. In this view, reality isn't warehouse of objects. Reality is weave of differences agreeing across repeated public comparisons. Comparisons stop agreeing. Thing dissolves. Not because reality vanished, because our compression failed. New instruments don't summon new worlds. They reveal new regularities in the weave. Bridge to holophase. What holophase adds beyond measurement first honesty? Asks. What simplest, most universal structure carrying difference, comparison, repeatability across cosmos? Proposes primitive isn't energy stuff or matter stuff. Primitive is cyclic order field, phase-like capacity that can wrap, align, drift, interfere, be compared. Thus, holophase treats time, space, motion as shadows of how primitive changes. Temporal rate, spatial gradient, kinematic flow time them. Don't rush. Part 2, not naming primitive yet. Part 2, clearing attaching points. Removing magical foundations. Establishing right to say real only after comparison survives. Why phase-like primitives fits? Why holophase drawn to cyclic, phase-like primitive? Operational reason, stated simply. Phase can be compared without needing absolute origin. Don't need first angle in universe to compare two angles. Compare differences. Compare wraparound. Compare alignment and drift. This makes phase naturally compatible with measurement first rule. Builds public reality from relative comparisons, not private absolutes. Later, hearing coherence, interference, gradients, flow, not metaphysical ornaments. Structures instruments can actually compare repeatedly across many contexts. Rope-friendly structures. Thus, part 3 matters. Part 3 names primitive, not as fantasy entity, but simplest comparison carrier generating rest. Time-like change, space-like difference, motion-like transport. Strip science of everything except one act. Two readings, side by side, compared honestly. No story first, no metaphysics first. Just discipline difference, tied to prediction, made mortal through falsification, shared through calibration. Holophase dares say, that's not only beginning of science, that's beginning of public reality. Part 3 names primitive, making comparison possible. Remember one sentence. In holophase, reality is what survives disciplined comparison. Everything else, entities, substances, foundations, must earn right to be spoken by passing rope test, paying rent through prediction, remaining mortal under falsification. Feel that pivot in bones. You're ready. Always. Peace be upon you.